Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Will. Welcome to Monday's Lunch and Learn. As always, we'll give everyone a few minutes to sort of filter in here. We have one or two pre-submitted questions, which we'll kick off with, and then, as always, you can use a raise hand feature, type your question out in the chat so we can go ahead and get to it. Okay. Need to look at some of the questions that we have launched here. Those people aren't in our meeting yet. I might wait a minute. While we are waiting for some of the pre-submitted question folks to join, does anyone who's on the meeting have a question that I might be able to jump to? As always, you can just use the raise hand feature or type your question out in the chat, either way. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Marie. What do you got today?
Wondered if you had any information on the Process Diamond acquisition. Is there a video or anything that we could be watching or something you could show us while we're waiting?
I don't have any content, right? We are vigorously engaged in getting the technology that we've acquired in Process Diamond into our product. So probably within the next 3 weeks, we should be able to provide you a demo of its use. But I can give you some. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to know if it was going to be standard, or is that something you'd have to purchase as an add-on? How's that going to work? Or do you know?
Great question. I do know it is going to be included in the base product and available in the launch of version 8.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's really cool technology. I mean, it's so the goal is for it to automatically report on the processes that you've built. Now, there's some restrictions in terms of the processes it can report on. But any stateful process, basically any process folder process or flow or case process that you've built with decisions, you will automatically get, you're going to automatically get some really cool process mining views into that process for free once you upgrade to V8. But it's also going to let you mine other processes as long as you can get them into the CSV or tabular format that the process mining function needs. And this is something we're going to work closely on, work closely together, helping you guys on. But you can then mine other processes. So for example, you could mine Salesforce, and we did this for our own Salesforce. You could say to a customer or to another user at your company who uses Salesforce, hey, let's mine your Salesforce implementation. Let's see what your sales process looks like. Let's identify where the slow pieces are. And then and then say, all right, instead of throwing away the sales process and rebuilding it, let's have a targeted solution with decisions to fix that one thing, right? The slowdown is that it takes, finance it's taking finance 4 days to approve a contract. And we want to get that down to 2 days. All right, what can we use decisions for to help finance track and complete those tasks more quickly? So our hope is that it actually allows us as the users of decisions, both the developers and the solution architects, to better identify use cases across the organization that are ripe for automation. It definitely allows us to surface in a very deep level where the bottlenecks and hotspots of existing digital processes are. And then and then we can develop targeted solutions using either it could just be forms, it could be API calls and orchestration. It could be any of the things that Decisions is really great at to help solve that particular problem. But yeah, it's not an add-on, it's in the core product, and it's coming out with the launch of V8, which is going into beta next month. So if you're interested in participating in the beta of V8, please reach out either to, I guess in your case, to your channel manager, but for your customer success manager, to help get on that, get on the beta list.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that reminds me, that's a great point though. We should have, we absolutely should be talking about that on these calls. It's a really exciting thing. I'm really excited to get to show it off. I know you'll access it through the Decision Studio. There'll be an action that'll launch a new tab that'll bring you into the process mining view, at which point you can then open up and view the processes you built in Decisions to see how the process mining utility is reporting on them working, as well as mine completely completely independent business processes. So very cool stuff, and we will be able to show it to you shortly.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Okay, any other questions from anyone? If not, I'll go ahead and just jump into some of the pre-submitted questions, since we're a few minutes in and those users haven't joined yet. Okay, so here's a question. This is a question. Let me post this in the full chat here. Oh, I copied part of it, sorry. The question is, where to see the flow configuration history table? Okay, so every flow in Decisions has a history folder. Now, if we look, I'm going to come into this folder, and I have a flow here, flow 1. If I click into flow 1, I can see the diagram, of course, but on the under the view action here, no, odd. Okay, let me get to it a different way. I can come to flow 1, right click, and I can say history documentation open view, and this is going to launch a new tab, and in this tab is going to be the history of this particular flow. On the right hand side, I can see versions that have been saved off. On the left hand side, I can see the comments added when saving the flow, and I can see some information here in the top. I can see the current preview image. This will update as well. But this is actually you'll see this is a folder, and this is a hidden folder. So if I were to go to folder view and change my view to see hidden entities, which I can do here. Again, I can go to folder view. I can click the gear icon, change report, change, view hidden items. I'll get a bunch of hidden items. I'm going to collapse the ones that are not hidden. You'll notice there's a bunch of history folders. So this is just a Decisions folder. And if I click into that, you'll see I'm in the same view here that I saw in the previous tab. Let me move my window thing out of the way. So on here, you'll have restore from backup options. Again, these are older versions. These are effectively restore points. So if you make a change or something happens to a flow and you need to restore that particular flow, you can come and select restore from backup on the versions list on the right-hand side of the history folder. And again, to get here, what you do is, let me come back to my default designer page, go to your flow or your rule or your form. It's any designer entity, come to history documentation and click open view. And open view will then bring you into the history folder where you can see the metadata on the top left, the comment and preview image history on the bottom left, and then a list of all of the restore points that have been saved off on the right-hand side. And Amber just posted a great doc, which I'll pull up now, about history and documentation actions available with a designer entity. So that question was from Jeremy. Jeremy's not on, so I will not, a different Jeremy. We have one Jeremy on. So I will move on then to our next question. We need help understanding a specific workflow process. That's from Daniel. Unfortunately, Daniel, without more information, I'm not gonna be able to answer that question. So hopefully you'll join in the next few minutes, and then we can talk about the specific question you have about your specific workflow process. All right, and then we have a question here from Jay. Let me see here. Let me copy this into the chat so everyone can see it. All right, our question here is, I'm facing an issue with the static value we provide in forms. I want the radio buttons to have the default option, but when the user changes the option, he couldn't see the value what the user gave. He can see only the default option each time when the form gets reloaded. It'd probably be good. So we have a static radio button list. It would probably be good to have Jay on the call to talk through this one in more detail as well. I'm having an issue with the static value we provide in the forms. So I want the radio buttons to have the default option, but when the user changes the option, he couldn't see the value what the user gave. Okay, so I don't think you can use static. Let's go ahead and create a folder. I think I understand what this developer is asking. So let's create a designer folder here. And what's today? 110 at root. Yep. Okay, we'll create a flow. And we'll create a form. And drop a button. And we will search for radio and find a radio button list. And we'll put it on the bottom left. And we will say the type is static list. And then we should say A, B, C. Okay. Oops. Select, now I'll change this to selected radio button. Okay. And then I'm going to I'm going to get what I think this user is asking about is if the user comes back to the form later on in the flow loops back. And so to contrive that, I'm going to use a placeholder step here and loop back to our form. Even though this flow will never complete, which is a bad design, but we'll just do it for the purposes of this. And selected radio button will be select from flow, selected radio button. Now I get that available because it's an output and the flow now has a circular diagram. In fact, if I break this and connect it to the end, the flow can never loop back, which means this data is never available to the form to use. But because the diagram can loop back, like an example that could make more sense to everyone is like a true false rule, where on true, we might loop back to the form. In fact, let me do that example in place of this placeholder example since it's kind of silly. Okay, I'll just set this to true all the time. Or on true, I can loop back. I've done some sort of post-submission validation. Now, if I debug this, the first time I load it, I shouldn't have anything. But if I click A and submit it, it should load again with A. So I think without being able to have a conversation with our user who's asking this question, Jay Kavya, that this is the answer to their question, which is I can take the output of my form and map it to the input of my form. If I have a circular diagram, if I have some sort of circular behavior in my flow, if the downstream steps circle back in some way to the form. And I did this by setting up a radio button list whose type is static. I don't have static default items selected. I'm using, this might be in a place where the user is confused. I'm using, yeah, so here, if I wanted to select this ahead of time, I'm not going to use static default item. I'm going to actually select it. I'm going to select it on the input here. So what would that look like? Let me make this a little bit better. So the input to that is a list of strings. So it's a string list. I can see string, or selected is a single string. So what I'm going to do is grab a create data step. I'm going to drop it in the flow. I'm going to create a input called selected or default radio button, default radio button selection of type string. And then I'm going to not select selected radio button. I'm going to select, actually I am. These should be the same mapping now. So let's see here. And then I need to set this. I'll set this to be B. Now let's debug this. Okay, that didn't work. View input. Selected radio button is null. There's B. Default radio button selection, excuse me. Okay, B selected. Now I'm going to change it to C, but B is back. Okay, I'm probably getting closer to the use case. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the output of my form, and I'm going to change this output from rename. I'm going to say change value. And I'm going to change the value of default radio button selection here to be the value the user selects. And then I'll run this again. So it starts with B. I change it to C. And I load again, and it's back to B. Did it not change value? That's okay. All we will have to do then is rename and copy the output, the data name of our create data step here. Someone else join. Yeah. So. Okay, debug. So start with B, select C. B is back again. What's going on here? Maybe I'm caught in the same loop they were.
I was looking at a forum post that might be similar to the situation they were talking about. And the posted solution for that was to change that rename to a change step or on the change value on the input mapping type. And that might fix it. I'm not sure if that might help you out.
Okay, yeah, that's what I just tried. It didn't work. So that's B. Default radio button selection comes out. I pass in default radio button selection. Now I should be updating. Let me see here. What am I missing? Starts as B, I select C. Oh, there it goes. Weird. Let's make sure that works again. Starts as B, I select A, comes as A. Okay, great. So I think this walk back through. We have a form. The form has a static radio button list, and it has a single input. We are not using static input. We are using the selected item data name, which allows us to select the default item dynamically. We get an input called selected radio button list. What we did is create a temporary value at the start of the flow called default radio button selection. We set it to be equal to the string value in the radio button list. Then we pass that in here to the selected radio button. And then we output the name of this as the same. We output this data name as the same. What that does then is when it moves through the flow, it actually updates that value from B to whatever the user submits, which allows us to re-show that on the form the second way through. So hopefully, Jay, and let's just send him a note once we post the video that we answered his question, as well as I can't answer Daniel's question, but I can answer Jeremy Manansala's question about the flow configuration history table.
You got it.
Okay. All right. What else do we got today? Yeah, and go ahead, Josh. What you got?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. So I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on if there is even one, like a best practice or a methodology to sort of having parameters or, sort of a config for your, set of flows or of your project. So like what I'm looking to do is like I set up the base flow or whatever, but I want the product team or whoever else to be able to go in and say, well, this person should get 7 records for their workflow, or this person should get 3 based on whichever based on whichever category they're in or whatever. So all those parameters are sort of like have like maybe like a front a front end on the portal side maybe, but then also have, but then be able to refer to all those values as the flow executes every time, every time.
Can you walk me? I'm not sure I follow that exactly. Can we walk back
So
through
like,
that again?
yeah, so let's just say, let's just think of an easy example. So the, let's say we're training a group and they have a flow that will assign them X number of records based on if they're beginner, intermediate, or expert. Okay. So during training, we'll set those levels at 1, 3, and 5 specifically. But then when we move into production or into actual execution, in real life, we want to say, well, the beginners should get 3, 7, and 10. But maybe we see after a week that it should go back down to 2, 5, and 6, or something like that. And now instead of having them put in a change request or me going in each time, sort of have them have a form that they can access through the portal that allows them to set the values that determine those things. Gotcha. Sort of what I'm looking to do, but I like a just a basic just a basic sort of demonstration of how one would set that up, and then I can apply it to all the other places where I need to have these sort of, because there's another project I have these parameters. Like there's a bunch of use cases I have for this.
Sure. Yeah, no, I love this question, Josh. This is my favorite topic to talk about.
Okay.
I don't love the title, but we call this thing data-driven design.
Okay.
And so what you do is you leverage, and I'll walk through this, but you leverage entities.
Okay.
As these as effectively these configuration objects, right?
Okay.
We do this, in fact, right now. Do I have the employee onboarding? Let me see. Do I have employee onboarding? That might be the best place to show this. Employee onboarding. We do this right now in employee onboarding. So, and this is available in the My Apps folder. If you guys look at the App Store, you won't have all of this stuff because this is showing everything in My Apps,
Right.
but you should see in here is, oh man, employee onboarding. There's so many I can't see. Oh, well, it's in here somewhere. How about that?
Take your word for it.
So in employee onboarding, we have these things called activities, right? These activities, if you actually look in folder view, oh, where's the activity at? Let's look at onboarding project here. There is a simple data structure called an onboarding activity. And if you look at this thing, it has a string for group assigned, it has a string for activity name, order, creates an account, some other properties, right? And so what you do is you come to a folder somewhere. Now I would use entities for this, not simple data structures, and we can talk about that in a minute. And this is your user who you want to maintain the data of your process, right? Now, and so the way to think about this is in our flow for onboarding, let's go look at the main onboarding flow, main flow. So in the main onboarding flow, what we do is we set up a process folder, we set its state, and then the first thing we do is we fetch all of those activities that your users have created. So in your example, you want to build an onboarding flow But you don't want, every time HR needs to add a new step to onboarding for a new compliance requirement or a new sort of like training requirement or something,
Yep.
maybe diversity training has changed in some way that's meaningful and they need to update that. You don't
Okay.
want to have to go make an edit to your flow, right?
No.
You want to say, well, I created an interface for you. Here's a, basically what you want to be able to do is say, oh, here's the link to the training document that shows you how to add new activities to your onboarding flow, right?
Right.
Like that's the end state for us as the designer of these processes, right?
Mhm.
And so what we do is set up a folder, set its state, get all the onboarding activities, right? And then we start
How do you
for
make,
each.
how do you
Yeah.
make an activity? I guess you'll cover that. Did I miss? How do you make the activity?
It's just a data structure.
Oh,
That's
okay,
the thing.
okay.
It's just, and I'll show
Okay.
you how it maps here in just a minute.
Okay, great. Okay.
It's just a data structure. And I would either use folder extensions or entities
Okay.
for these particular types. But here, so we get all the activities, right? And those activities are listed in some folder somewhere. They happen to be in this onboarding activities one. You can see right now there's an add a user to Chorus AI. And this is a great example. We switched from Chorus AI to a application called Gong. So now,
Okay.
like now the who's in charge could come in here and say, add user to Gong account list or whatever, right? And then update some instructions. So let's just do this. So add to Gong, need to be added to Gong. See linked instructions. See linked instructions. Oh man, instructions for examples. So now I've done that change control, that change request that you're talking about wanting to get away from. And if I launch that again, I'll get that task. And the way I launch that is because the flow, when it runs, gets all those activities and it starts looping them. Now, if we look at that activity, you'll notice it has a priority or an order. If we edit this thing, it has an activity order. And in the flow, I'm using a for each in order step. And I'm ensuring the order of these by their order, and then I for each them. So onboarding activity collection, onboarding activity. I don't know actually why. I don't know why I'm doing a double loop here. To be clear, I haven't built this, but I don't think we need to do that double loop. So I'm looping them, and then I come, and you'll notice an onboarding activity object comes into this flow. And in this flow, we have an assign activity, onboarding activity step. And if you look at edit assignment, you'll see the who gets it comes from the group assigned on the onboarding activity, right? Or if you look at the assignment name, it's going to be onboarding activity name for employee name, which is an input to this flow. So you have a data type that you're looping, and for each object in that data type, you're creating an assignment. This is just one example, right? And so your onboarding flow will generate X number of assignments for Y number of activities in this folder. And your users maintain the actual content of those assignments or those things by editing the activities. And then the next time the thing is launched, the flow will grab all of the current activities and it will start looping through them. And then that way you can say, you can add activities, you can remove activities, and you can edit the content of those activities, right? Just think, but it's more general than that, but we're just using the onboarding example here, right? And then with that, you now put the control completely in their hands, right? You can say, you can add it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So this entity is available to all steps in the flow, is my question making sense? How do I access some of that? Like, do I need to bring it in the beginning of the flow? Like, how does decisions know that this entity exists if I don't create it in the flow itself?
Yeah, look at this is our step here. This step comes from the onboarding activity.
I got you. Okay.
Right. We just know there's an onboarding activity step.
So I would fetch this entity that has the values for the beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and bring that in, and then that can just do it that way. Is that oversimplifying it? Is that?
Well, I don't understand well enough the differences between them to probably.
Yeah.
But like,
that's fine.
like, let's assume instead of priority, like here we talked about these activities, right? Let's assume instead of priority, you had this was a drop down list, and it was like intro, medium, and advanced, right?
Mhm.
And you could add a bunch of activities. In fact, we can do this with responsible group. Let me add a couple things here. I'm just going to put in,
Okay.
update HRIS, and this responsible group will be administrators, right? And then I'll just put some text in here. Yep, and then I'm going to say this will be update AD. Oops, AD, and the responsible group here is going to be, fake group. There you go. I'm going to pick fake group for some reason, and to be done. Now I have these groups, so there's no reason to think that I can't build my flow to allow me to group by the group here and do these individually. So not knowing your process, but like, is it that the fact that you have a set of activities and you can do those by level in the same way we have a set of activities and we're grouping them by group, which case you could just use like a for each in group step or some other step to actually deal with these as groups. Like we could modify our flow to say, fetch all of these and for each as groups. So you do all the administrator tasks together. You can I guess I'm struggling to answer your question because I don't understand. Well, of course I don't understand well enough, like the thing you're building. Is this landing at all with you though?
A little bit. So I guess it's kind of confirming what I was thinking in my head is to just create an entity for each, sort of object I need to have parameterized, and then bring in, load those entities, as sort of as like what you're doing here. So so like another thing that we do is, what I do is like I sort of build like a rule. I analyze data, but the way that the data gets analyzed differs based on which product I'm looking at.
Okay.
So so right now I have every product hard coded into the flow that analyzes the data. But what I really would like to have is sort of say, well, I have 3 products and I want to be able to add a 4th without having to go through to every place where this product is affecting how the data gets analyzed.
Right.
So I want to, so if I have like 4, I guess, product entities, I bring them all in, I can then load each, I can then loop through those.
Right.
Okay. And so, and then I can also probably build, Spice is easy enough to build a front end, thing on the studio that allows you to add a product to that list, I guess, loop through. And then anyone
do this. Let's build one from the ground up since we were using this one. So what I'm going to do is,
I don't want to take up, if someone else has questions,
no, this is a great question. This is a really good question. I'm going to create a folder here called, I'll call it products, right? Yep. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to create data types integration, come to entity, and I'm going to create a, I'm just going to call it product, right? And it'll be, Josh build.product. This thing will have, it's an entity, so it gets name, and then I'll have like, I'll just put str1. I just have some custom string field on it, right? I'm going to save this.
Okay.
Oops, I forgot to do something. I'm going to let that update. I'm going to let that compile, and then I'm going to edit. So I'm going to edit product, and this is an entity, so I can get add and edit actions for free. So on the bottom right-hand side, I'm going to say, show me edit, show me delete, and show add, and then save this.
Okay.
So now that I have that, I have the world's dumbest CRUD interface for my users, right? With no configuration. I'm going to right-click on products, click add, entity user defined, and I'm going to create, unfortunately, I have 2 things called product. So it's not that one. It is, entity user defined. It's the first one. No, it's the second one. Sorry. That was unfortunate. Entity user defined. It's the second one. So here we are. Oh, maybe they're getting.
They have to rename it. Rename the
Lord.
entity. Getting cross.
Here, I got it. Hold on. We'll override the action name. We'll edit our thing here. Select our top and we'll say override create action name. Create action name will be create new Josh entity. Then let me do that. Let me refresh my portal. Now I'll come back to products.
You create
And
more
I'll go-
Joshes, you gotta get more questions like these every night.
No, this is my favorite question to answer. Create new Josh entity. So there's our type, right? And also I'll call this thing product 1. And the string is going to be, I'll just call this string value 1, right? Now I have this, I have this just data type. It's just a full entity in a folder somewhere. So what I'm going to do is come back, I'm going to build a flow, right? And the flow is going to just loop through, I'll say loop through, I'm just going to say loop through all products. Okay, and it's just going to show the string value on a form. It's going to be very simple. I'm going to fetch those things. I'm going to for each that list, and I'm going to show it on a form till the entity list is exhausted, right? So here we go, fetch entities. We'll search for product, and we'll find our Josh build product, and we'll fetch all of them. To that, we'll pass that list to our for each step here, which will be entity results, okay? And then we're going to pass that to our form. So I'm going to go create a quick form here. Right, and then let's go ahead and we're just going to drop a label. I'll call this product name, and then we'll add a label here, and this will be called string or property. I'll just call it str1 value. I'm going to put 2 text boxes here. This will be called name, and this will be called str1 value, and this will be button. Okay. So then I'm going to loop back to my for each step. Again, I'm just going to show you how to this doesn't make any sense to do necessarily, but hopefully it'll get the idea across.
Yeah, no, I see. Yeah, this is.
So I'll go to my input mapping editor, and I'm going to come to item, and for name, I'm going to find my entity name, and then I'm going to find str1 for str1. There we go. I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to debug it. So it's going to run. It's going to show me product 1 string value 1, right? Now all I have to do is let me exit this flow. And let me find 110, come to my products. And again, I want to go add entity user define, create new Josh entity. This will be called product 2. And the str1 value will be, I'll do hello world for my string value here and click save. Come back to my other tab, close my form, run a new session here. Okay, product 1. I submit this, and now I've got product 2 and hello world. So now the data in this folder is driving the execution of this flow.
Right.
And users only have to come in. So then we just can start saying, okay, well, now I'm going to put a custom report on this folder, and I'm going to put a folder action bar, and I'm going to put charts and reports and graphs and other things to make the user interface meaningful for my business users, on this. But and then what you come and they come in, they log in, all they see is a products folder. They come to the products folder to add and edit, so that you can come edit product 2 and say hello world, right? And then we can run the flow again, right? And we should then get product 1 first, and then hello world with an exclamation point when we run it, when we get to the second iteration.
Okay. Got it. Okay. This is a good.
Does this help?
This helps.
Does this help at all?
Yeah, this helps my my thinking process. I think these will be it's easy for me to think procedurally. It's hard for me to think objectively. It's like to extract all the parameters I need out of the flow, and put those parameters into the product setup, product
Yeah.
variables.
No,
and
this
then
is a super
type,
powerful pattern when you're building
yeah,
back
no, I see
office
that,
type
right.
stuff.
But then right, and then I can once and then the first step in any flow that I use is just to fetch all these entities, and I can just rip off of the settings that I have for any loop through it. I think I'm getting the sense of what I need to do.
Yeah,
here.
if you want to, if after you take this
Yeah.
away and you want to have some specific questions about your build, just reach out to your customer success
Definitely.
manager, and we can schedule a couple of minutes to dive in and talk more in detail.
Yeah.
It's my singular mission to get everyone to build all of their processes like this, because it's just really it helps really demonstrate the flexibility of the platform, as well as prevent you from spending all of your time not building new value, but just making real dumb modifications to existing stuff.
Right. So the idea would be like, as we add parameters to our product, I can just add value into the flow for that parameter, and then change the values in the products to affect those values.
Yeah, exactly.
Affect those parameters. That's okay. Okay. I will continue to think about this. It's gonna be a month or two till I get around to tinkering with this, but this is very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, you bet. Happy to help. All right. So Mr. Humphrey's got a question. Let me post this in the chat here. I want this to everyone. Let's see. Best way to create a converter flow for convert string to decimal, or convert decimal to string, excuse me, or maybe one exists so far. I think it would, I don't know that we ship with one. Sounds like you've already built it. Get to string value decision step. We don't have a convert decimal to string. So if you were building a converter flow and you took in des to convert, do you need a step, or can you just, I guess you're wanting to retain, you're converting it to strings. Do you want to retain the numbers after, to the right of the decimal point?
Yeah. Hey, Will.
Hey.
This is just for convenience. So like within an output of a step, you can just, if you're outputting a decimal and you want to input it into something that takes a string. But I couldn't find one that like was part of the decisions platform. So.
I don't know that I know we have it the other way.
Yeah.
Right. I think probably just map like this is probably what I would do in that converter flow. Like you just take the unformatted output option on the decimal and pass it into so here's not a converter flow. I could make it a converter flow. Let's see here.
Oh, okay.
So change this to a converter flow. Converter flow takes in a decimal, it outputs a string, and the mapping is the decimal to convert to unformatted. That should just pass it in as a string and do that mapping for you there.
That's really cool.
But yeah, I do not think we ship with this, although we should.
Yeah, I'll just do that. That's kind of slick. I just, yeah, I found this step that was just object to string.
Right.
So that seems to work, but I like this better.
Yeah, it would work, but that's supposed to take like a generic object. Sometimes customers build stuff where they need to use the object type. And that's one of those steps that like almost casts an object to a string. So it's actually like the C#, that, ambiguous sort of generic object that you can, I guess, use that we can't use in the flow designer. There's some other examples of that too, like object to properties or cast object to type. If we just searched object, we'd get a bunch of these, get property on object, get objects of type, object is null, object data pairs, things like that. Yeah, CSV to object. But yeah, I think this is probably more straightforward and less steps.
That's what I was looking for, just something obvious that I didn't think of. Thanks, Will.
You bet, sir. Happy to help. All right. Anybody else got any questions for us today? Please don't be shy. We're here to help. Okay, if that's it, then I think we'll go ahead and call it an afternoon. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Remember, we do these every Monday through Thursday, noon to 1 Eastern. Anyone's available to join, please let everyone else know at your organizations. It's probably the best way to get quick access to questions that can be hard to ask over email, which is how our primarily how support works. So appreciate the questions. Look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, everyone.